Gentleness is, I think, one of the most underrated strengths that a man can possess. See, in a world that celebrates dominance, aggression, and control, gentleness can often feel like a rebellion of sorts. It takes, I think, more courage to hold your power with restraint than it does to just lash it out. And gentleness, I think, creates that safety. It disarms hostility. It opens space for vulnerability. And without it, I think intimacy withers, and especially under the weight of harshness. But gentleness also has a shadow side too, I believe. See, what begins as compassion can often turn into avoidance. And what looks like kindness can quietly become fear. And sometimes we call ourselves gentle, when in reality we're just avoiding conflict. And so we soften every word, not to honor the person, but more so to protect ourselves from the discomfort. And, and we hold back truth, convincing ourselves that silence is more so a kindness. But when gentleness becomes avoidance, I think it ceases to become a virtue. It actually becomes more of a vice in that moment. Now, there's a difference, I think, between gentleness and passivity. See, gentleness speaks the truth with love. And passivity, I think it withholds truth out of fear. Gentleness strengthens intimacy because it really combines safety with honesty. Whereas passivity, it erodes intimacy because it hides honesty behind this mask of softness. And while they may look similar from the outside, their outcomes couldn't be more different, I think. See, I've seen this in my own life, like where there were moments when I told myself that I was choosing to be gentle, when in truth, I was just avoiding hard conversations. And I didn't want to risk rejection. I didn't want to feel the discomfort of naming what was real. And so I softened my words until the truth, in essence, just disappeared altogether. And while it looked like patience, really it was cowardice. It didn't protect the relationship. It just hollowed it out from the inside. Now, young men especially, I think, need this distinction. See, too many of us, we grew up seeing gentleness as equated with weakness, right? So when we finally discover that it can be a strength, we cling to it. We're determined not to repeat the mistakes of harshness because we've seen those before. But in the process, I think we can overcorrect. Like we can actually become so soft that we stop being honest. And we then confuse gentleness with silence. And in doing so, we betray both ourselves and those very people we care about. Now, integrity calls us to far more, doesn't it? Integrity demands that our softness never becomes the excuse for avoidance. It asks us to, in essence, bring both compassion and conviction and tenderness and truth, because intimacy can only grow when both of those are present. See, without compassion, truth can wound. And without truth, compassion really deceives. The real connection, I think, requires both ends, right? And this is why gentleness must be paired with courage. Courage, in essence, ensures that our softness does not hide the truth, but instead delivers it with care and love. And courage turns gentleness from avoidance into power. It makes, in essence, our words both safe and strong. And I think that's the kind of gentleness that builds true intimacy. Not a fragile, quiet one, but a courageous softness that can hold the tension without breaking. Now, avoidance disguises itself as kindness often. We say things like, I didn't want to hurt their feelings, or it wasn't the right time to bring it up. Recognize those? See, on the surface, those sound thoughtful. But beneath them, I think avoidance often hides that fear of conflict, fear of being misunderstood. And when fear is driving our gentleness, well, it's no longer gentleness, and it actually becomes self-protection. And the irony is that avoidance doesn't actually prevent the hurt. It more so just delays it. The words that we withhold aren't really disappearing. They linger unspoken, but felt. And the tension begins to build, and the disconnection grows, and then eventually what could have been just addressed with courage in an earlier stage now becomes a deeper wound later. And avoidance often robs a relationship of that chance to grow through honesty. Now, gentleness without truth is like, it's kind of like a smile that never reaches the eye, right? It looks comforting, but it really feels hollow. And people sense when we're holding back. They may not know the specifics perhaps, but they can feel that gap, and they feel the absence of honesty. And that absence, it makes them question whether intimacy is real or just an illusion that's in essence maintained by silence. Now, for young men, the temptation to avoid is strong. Like, we are often taught to value being easygoing and to avoid being the one who makes the waves, right? Or to equate quietness with maturity. And so we slip into passivity, convincing ourselves that we're being kind when in reality we're just disappearing. But disappearing doesn't build trust though, does it? It actually breaks it, because intimacy requires presence, and presence requires truth. Now, I've been there myself. I remember times when I swallowed the truth, telling myself that I was protecting someone else. But what I was really protecting was myself. I was protecting myself from the reaction, or from my own discomfort, or from the vulnerability of being fully honest. And every time that I did that, that relationship suffered. And the distance would grow. And that was because even when unspoken, truth really makes its absence known. See, integrity challenges us to speak anyway, not recklessly, not harshly, not without thought, but with honesty. Integrity asks us to align our gentleness with our convictions, so that the kindness comes out so the kindness comes out with the truth. See, true gentleness does not erase honesty. It really delivers the honesty in a way that can actually be heard. And it is strength under control. It's like courage with compassion. And this balance is rare, but it's essential, I would say. Gentleness without courage is really avoidance. And courage without gentleness is more like aggression, right? But when courage and gentleness meet, intimacy flourishes, because then people both feel safe and seen, and then they know that they're cared for, and they know that the truth is not really being withheld. And that's, I think, where truth grows, in that kind of a soil. So if we want our relationships to be real, we can't let softness turn into silence. We must cultivate that kind of gentleness that speaks even when it trembles, that tells the truth even when it risks the tension, that actually values integrity more than the comfort. That's the gentleness that I think changes lives. And one of the most destructive effects of avoidance that's disguised as gentleness is that slow erosion of trust. See, at first it seems harmless. I mean, we soften the truth, right? We leave certain things unsaid, and we smile where we're really feeling unsettled inside. But over time, people begin to sense that gap. They realize that they're not really getting the full story. And trust, when it's broken once by omission, is really hard to rebuild. Intimacy, however, thrives on honesty. It cannot survive on half-truths or on polite silence. See, when I withhold what's real in the name of being gentle, I create distance. And the other person, they may still see me as kind, but they won't see me as trustworthy. Because trust is not built on comfort. Trust is built on truth delivered with care. Young men often, I think, fall into this trap because we're afraid of being perceived as harsh. And so we overcorrect from the models of aggression that we came from and that we've seen and experienced. And we try so hard to be soft that we oftentimes disappear. We become agreeable at all costs. But agreeableness without honesty is not a virtue. It's avoidance, right? Avoidance dressed up in good manners. And while it may keep the peace for a season, it will never create that intimacy. Now, I've walked this path myself. I remember times when I thought I was protecting the relationship by staying quiet. I told myself in essence, it's not worth the fight, right? I'll just let it go. But in reality, I wasn't letting it go. I was actually burying it. And buried truth does not vanish. It just festers. It leaks out later in resentment and in coldness and in sudden outbursts that shock both me and the other person. See, by avoiding honesty early on, I guaranteed that a bigger conflict was coming later. And this is why integrity matters so deeply. Integrity refuses to split truth from love. It insists that real gentleness must include honesty. Because without honesty, gentleness just becomes manipulation. A way, if you will, of controlling how people see us rather than showing them who we truly and really are. Integrity, see, asks us to risk discomfort for the sake of authenticity. Now, true gentleness does not deny hard truths. It in essence delivers them with compassion. It doesn't bulldoze others with blunt words, but neither does it actually erase reality with silence. Instead, it stands in the tension of love and honesty, choosing both end. And that choice is, I think, what creates intimacy, because intimacy is the courage to be fully seen. And the difference between softness and avoidance is really presence. See, softness shows up with both kindness and conviction. And avoidance, it withdraws under the guise of gentleness. And every time that we withdraw, we're losing an opportunity to actually be known. Every time we're avoiding, we're in essence trading intimacy for this illusion. And for young men who want to live with integrity and intimacy, the challenge is clear. Don't let fear disguise itself as a virtue, and don't call avoidance gentleness. Don't settle for a softness that refuses to speak truth. Instead, cultivate a gentleness that loves enough to be honest. Because real love never hides behind silence. It actually shows up with courage. And the promise of gentleness is safety. And safety matters. But safety without truth is really an illusion. It may soothe in the moment, but it leaves an emptiness in the long run. Because intimacy cannot grow where reality is denied. Intimacy cannot thrive where fear is dictating the silence. Real gentleness is never about erasing the truth. It's about delivering it with compassion, and it's also about it's about refusing to let fear write the script. It's about saying the hard things in a way that can actually be heard and not withholding it altogether. See, when gentleness refuses to speak the truth, it stops being love. It now becomes self-protection. And self-protection always creates distance. Now, for young men, this is a call I think we cannot afford to ignore. Too many of us, we're tempted to retreat into silence and to mistake passivity for peace. But life of avoidance is really a life half-lived. It may look polite and agreeable, but beneath that surface, it's hollow, because the people around us don't need a softened version of us. They need the real us. They need presence with both kindness and courage. And I think that's why at Uber Vintagers, this is why I speak so often about integrity and intimacy. Integrity for me means that my gentleness does not compromise the truth. And intimacy, it means that my truth is delivered in a way that draws people closer instead of driving them away. And without both of those, integrity and intimacy, I think connection collapses. But with both, connection flourishes. And this is where today's theme is pointing us, and that's towards a really bigger picture that I'm looking forward to. Softness that hides truth, or a service that erases self, a calm that numbs reality. Like, these aren't random struggles that we've been exploring. These are really a larger pattern, I feel, a pattern of masquerading as a virtue. And I'll be unpacking what I call the 764 movement. It's this framework that will help us to name these counterfeits for what they truly are and to reclaim a life that is whole and present and true. So stay tuned next month for that. But for now, the choice is before us. Softness or avoidance? Gentleness or not? See, gentleness increases intimacy. And I think if we were to choose integrity and intimacy, it would enable us to experience a gentleness that dares to speak the truth, because that's the only gentleness I think that's really worth trusting. Let me know, my dear listener, how this episode and the ideas we're talking about landed with you. I will see you in the next episode.